Sorry, Prabhuji. It started recording now. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll begin. Because this is the first session of our last 6 chapters. So we'll begin with a small kirtan. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayo Radha Vrindavan Chandra Radha Vrindavan Chandra Radhe. Jayo Radha Vrindavan Chandra Radha Vrindavan Chandra Radhe. Jayo Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Jayo Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Jayo Jagannatha Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Jagannatha, Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Gauranitai, Gauranitai, Gauranitai. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Shri Hari Naam Sankirtan ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः पदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः। ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So we are into this 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So far, 12 chapters have been completed. That's the two major sections in Bhagavad Gita. The first 6 chapters, which comprises primarily of Karma Yoga, and then the next 6 chapters, which directly talk about Bhakti Yoga. And in these last 6 chapters, which are talking about Dhyana Yoga. But essentially, overall, if we see that whole Bhagavad Gita is aiming directly at devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the first 6 chapters direct that through Karma Yoga, and the middle 6 chapters are the direct, and the last 6 chapters are directing to the devotional service of the Lord through Dhyana Yoga. So that is why we see that in this particular section, there are many difficult and complicated terminologies. And especially the 13th chapter is, at a glance, if we see it appears very complicated with so many difficult terminologies. So we also refer Bhagavad Gita to as Gitopanishad. So it is considered as a essence of all Upanishad, and that's why it is called as Gitopanishad. And the language of Upanishad is very tricky and very much difficult as such. And that is what gives a pleasure to those intellectuals to study Upanishad. And that's why Bhagavad Gita is also called as Gitopanishad. And there are many verses which are in line with Upanishadas, which are there in Bhagavad Gita also. So this is all about just a brief introduction about the section which we are going to start with. And in this particular, especially, we are starting today with the 13th chapter, which is entitled as the nature, the enjoyer, and the consciousness. It is also called as the Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, or Prakriti Purusha Viveka Yoga. These are different titles based on acharyas which they have given. So basically, what has been discussed in this particular chapter is about, as Srila Prabhupada has given this wonderful title, the nature, the enjoyer, and the consciousness. So this material world that we see around is what is referred to as nature. And the enjoyer is the Supreme Lord, who is the supreme enjoyer of everything. And the consciousness is referred to the living entity. So this is how the basically everything boils down to these three terminologies, which are very well explained in this particular chapter. But apart from this, there are three other things also mentioned in this particular chapter, which will be very much clear after we discuss the first verse of this chapter, wherein Arjuna asks some question. And in that question, he is asking 6 items to be known, what they are. So now the question that may arise in the mind is, from where did Arjuna suddenly got these questions? So we were studying Bhakti Yoga section previously, and then suddenly from where have these questions come about? So the explanation can be given in this way, that actually, if we see at the beginning of the 11th chapter, if we see the 11th chapter, first verse, there Arjuna is saying that Mohoyam Vigato Mama Mad Anugrahaya Paramam Guhyam Adhyatma Sangitam Yaktavyo Yaktam Vachastenam Mohoyam Vigato Mama. So Arjuna is mentioning there that my moha, my illusion has gone away. And what was his illusion? As we are aware, in the first chapter, he mentions so many different things and reasons for not fighting. Because of that misplaced compassion, which was arised out of the illusion, And then Krishna, after he surrenders to Krishna in the second chapter, Krishna begins to explain the knowledge of the soul. And thereby he starts clearing the doubts of Arjuna. So finally, when Krishna has given him the full opulences in the 10th chapter, in the beginning of 11th chapter itself, Arjuna is saying that my moha is gone away. So in one sense, it is like, many times we have some classes given by some very good speakers. And at the end of the class, everything is over. There are question and answers. So sometimes the question answers are related to the topic, and sometimes because the personality who has come is quite learned, we want to get clear of our some other doubts, which are some concepts or something like that. So that's why we ask some questions in that regard also. So it is mentioned that the questions which Arjuna is asking, like in 12th chapter, he is asking the question, who is superior? Those who are worshippers of personalism or those who are worshippers of impersonalism. So conceptually, he's trying to understand what it is, who is better, who is not better. And then here in the 13th chapter, now he's asking some other kind of questions.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Sorry to interrupt, Prabhuji, because you are new to the class. with your permission, I would like to introduce you to the class, Prabhuji. I have got some introduction about you,
Okay.
so that everybody gets to know you, because we are going to, you're going to help us read all the 13 to until the end of the chapters. Can I introduce you to the team, Prabhuji, here?
Yes, please.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji's Matajis. I have an honor to introduce Sripad Mahaprabhu Das to all of you, who will be taking us to the rest of the journey of Bhagavad Gita and finish it as, for us. Sripad Mahaprabhu is senior brahmachari from ISKCON NVCC and got introduced to Krishna consciousness in 2003. He is main project coordinator for Velha Farm project and Saswad project. He thoroughly studied Bhagavad Gita and other Bhakti scriptures, and he's a very good friend of Anantagopal Prabhu. And let's all welcome him with 3 loud Hari Bols. Hari Bol,
Hari
Hari
Bol,
Bol,
Hari
Hari
Bol,
Bol.
Hari
A little bit about ourselves. We are all from Hyderabad, Prabhuji, from Gachibowli area. 99% of us are software engineers who don't know anything about scriptures. And we have the shelter of Lilananda Prabhu, who is our Siksha Guru, and kind of taking care of all of us. We are all associated with Bid's temple, Prabhuji, Radha Madan Mohan, and we go to the temple for some festivals, and otherwise we kind of do meet with each other during weekends in satsangs, and we do satsangs in each other family's house, and we rotate in each other family, and we're around 40 people here taking the Bhakti Shastri course. And thank you very much, Prabhuji, for your help in making us understand this scriptures, and we had very good teachers so far, and thank you very much for your help and time you're spending with us. So that's our introduction to it.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for giving a brief introduction about all of you also. So I am very much happy to be amongst all of you, and I hope that I keep the trend which was going on, imparting the similar kind of knowledge, and I hope I don't fall short in that. So need prayers of all of you for that.
Your blessings for all of us. Hare Krishna.
So I was just saying that here Arjuna is asking these questions to just get a clarification about certain aspects, which are some, because we can know very well that when Arjuna is asking these questions, he is in the era wherein Vedic culture is quite prominent. And in that Vedic culture, there are some terminologies which are well known to people in general. And Arjuna is wanting to know in depth more about those terminologies. And that's why he is placing this question. So now let's begin with reciting the first and second verse of the 13th chapter. Kindly repeat. Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Vacha
Prakritiṃ Puruṣam Chaiva.
Prakritim Puruṣam Chaiva
Kshetram Kshetrajñameva Cha.
Kshetram Kshetrajñameva Cha
Etad Veditumicchami.
Etad Veditumicchami.
Jnanam Jneyam Cha Keshava.
Jnanam Jneyam Cha Keshava. Prabhuji, if you permit me, should I project the Veda base so that everybody can see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we recite the verse next time, you can project.
Okay, Prabhuji, I'll do that.
So here Arjuna is asking 6 we can say terminologies, that what is Prakriti, what is a Purusha, Kshetra, Kshetrajña, and Jnanam and Jneya. So these are the 6 terminologies which are quite prevalent and common in the Vedic culture. And Arjuna wants to know more detail about all these things. So that's why he's saying, Etad Veditum Ichchami. I am very much desirous to know very well about these 6 terminologies, oh my dear Lord. So now, instead of just directly going to the discussion of these, let us see what Lord Krishna is responding to Arjuna's these questions. So let us recite the second verse. Now we can project it.
Yes, Prabhu.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Idam Shariram Kaunteya
Idam shariram kaunteya
Kshetramithya
kshetramityabhidhyate
Etadno Vetim Tam Prahu
etadyo veti tam prahu
Kshetradna iti tadvidaha.
kshetrajna iti tadvidah.
Somebody would like to read the translation?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can I read it, Prabhu?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjuna said, "O my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, and the field, and the knower of the field, and the knowledge, and the object of knowledge." The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and the one who knows this body is called the knower of the field."
Yeah. So here we can see, I'm sorry, just let us briefly go through the flow of the 13th chapter before we directly enter into it. So here the first first question which Arjuna is asking are nothing but the 6 questions. And from verse number 2 to verse number 7, Krishna will answer the 3rd, 4th and 5th question. So what is the 3rd question? First is Prakriti, 2nd is Purusha, 3rd is Kshetra. So Kshetra, then 4th is Kshetrajna, and 5th is Jnanam. So 3rd, 4th and 5th, Krishna will answer from 2 to 7. Verse number 2 to verse number 7. And then from verse number 8 to 12, Krishna will give further more clarification about Jnanam. What are the various items of knowledge? And then from verse number 13 to 19, Krishna will be speaking about Jnayam, what is the object of knowledge. And verse number 20 to 26, Krishna will talk about Prakriti Purusha, which is the answer to the 1st and 2nd question. And finally, from verse number 27 to 35, Krishna will explain about Jnana Chakshu, that how one can understand everything from the perspective of scriptures, or how can one see based on perspective of scriptures. So this is how we can see the flow of the first this 13th chapter is. So somebody is asking to show this. So unfortunately, I have not prepared a PPT. So I think from next time I can make it sure that I can also share all these things on the PPT. I'm sorry for that.
Prabhuji, I think they're also available in the handbook, right, Prabhuji? In the handbook, the detailed handbook, I see that they're available. So Mataji, if you have that handbook, you can take a look at it for now.
Or you can share, if you have it, Praveen Prabhu, you can show the PDF.
Yeah, let me search, Prabhuji. Yeah, Prabhuji, go ahead. I'll search.
Yes. I already have it, so I will just show you then in that.
Oh, okay, it's in that.
I cannot share the. Yeah. I'll just share it. Just a minute. Yeah. So here it is. Everybody can see this.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
It's
So 1 to 7, Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Or we can say that even some part of Jnanam is explained here. And from 8 to 12, the process of Jnana or the items of knowledge is very thoroughly discussed. And then 13 to 19, Jnayam is discussed. And 20 to 26, Prakriti Purusha and their union or interaction. And finally, 27 to 35 is Jnana Chakshusha, the vision of knowledge. That how we can see everything through the eyes of scriptures. Okay. So then now we will see what Krishna is actually answering. How Krishna is answering the 3rd and 4th question of Arjuna. So if we see the translation directly, we can see here that the body, this body, here Krishna is pointing to the body of Arjuna and saying, this body, oh my dear Arjuna, Kaunteya, this body is called the field. This body is a field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. So it is a very brief answer given by Krishna. And now let us go in depth through the purports of Srila Prabhupada to very well understand what exactly is this Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So can somebody read the purport?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Please.
Arjuna was inquisitive about Prakriti, nature, Purusha, the enjoyer, Kshetra, the field, Kshetrajna, its knower, and knowledge, and the object of knowledge. When he inquired about all these, Krishna said that the body is called the field, and the one who knows the body is called the knower of the field. This body is the field of activity for the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul is entrapped in material existence, and he attempts to lord it over material nature. And so, according to his capacity to dominate material nature, he gets a field of activity. This field of activity is the body.
Okay,
And
fine.
what is the body?
So we'll read ahead again later. So here we can see Prabhupada is mentioning that this body is a field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field. Now, who knows the body? Now we see this in the conditioned state. What is the situation? That the living entity is completely entrapped and illusioned, and he thinks himself to be the body. And that's why that living entity who is thinking himself to be the body cannot be called as the Kshetrajna. But one who knows the field of activity, just like we see that somebody is driving a car. So when he is driving a car, he knows that he is not the car. He is driving it, and he is using the car to go to a certain destination. And he is aware that he is utilizing the car to go to that place. So that way he knows that he is not the car. So that kind of living entity is actually the real Kshetrajna. So the conditioned living entity thinks himself to be the body. And that's why he wants to enjoy sense gratification to various degrees. And to the degree he wants to enjoy, to the various degrees he wants to enjoy sense gratification, based on that he is offered a type of body. So we can see that if there is a living entity who wants to eat meat voraciously, so he is giving the body of a lion or tiger, But we see that even there are some other animals who are eating meat, like jackals or somebody, vultures, like that. So what is the difference then? The difference is that the difference of the capacity. Or we can see that there are even some birds like crows, they are also eating meat. But what kind of meat they eat? The dead flesh, which is lying on the road for many days, and which is being, it is rotting like anything. That kind of flesh is eaten by the birds like crows. So, but lion or tiger, generally they will not eat such kind of flesh. They will make sure that they themselves go around and hunt the prey, and then they eat. They may keep that for 2-3 days for themselves, but they will not eat something which is already died or something like that. They will themselves kill and eat. So there is a difference. So why this difference is there? Because the capacity of sense gratification of that particular condition living entity is different. So based on that capacity, he is offered that kind of body. So that is how we see that there are different kinds of body. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here that the conditioned soul wants to enjoy sense gratification, and according to his capacity to enjoy sense gratification, he is offered a body or field of activity, and therefore the body is called Kshetra. And then Prabhupada further explains in this purport that it is not very difficult to understand the difference between the field and its knower. So how can we understand the difference between the field and the knower? Any references from Bhagavad Gita? Can anyone say? Wherein we can very easily identify the difference between the body and the soul, or the kshetra and the kshetrajna. If you remember, in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there are some verses which helps us to understand this. You may not know the verse, but you can just give the translation or the meaning of it. No? Remember the verse, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara. There, Krishna was explaining Arjuna that the living entity who is in the body of a small child, so eventually that body keeps growing and the person remains the same. So the body is undergoing changes, but the person remains the same. And then further, Krishna also gives the example of, yes, Vasamsi Jirinani.
So just like how you get rid of old clothes, torn clothes, you get new clothes.
Yes. Perfect. So when the clothes are torn and old, we just give it away and take up new clothes. Similarly, the soul gives up the body and takes up new body. So that is how Srila Prabhupada is trying to explain in this purport that it is so easy actually to understand the difference between the kshetra and kshetrajna. But because the living entity is conditioned, he starts thinking that I am man, I am woman, I am black, I am white, and I am this and I am that. I am dog, I am cat, like this. So these are all the bodily designations of the knower. So that way, the kshetrajna thinks himself to be the kshetra. And then Prabhupada also explains one more thing. Just like I gave the example of car, Prabhupada goes ahead to explain another way that we use many articles, like our clothes or shoes, but we never say that I am my shoes or I am my clothes. One time Srila Prabhupada was in one school, and he wanted to drive away this point of difference between body and the soul. So he called one of the child and he said, tell me, where are your hands? And so he pointed, these are my hands. So he said, tell me, where is your nose? So he pointed to the nose. This is my nose. Then tell me, where are your eyes? So he pointed to the eyes. Tell me, where are your legs? So he pointed to the legs. And then he said, tell me, where are you? And then he was wondering where to point. So he pointed towards chest. Then he said, no, tell me, where are you? Srila Prabhupada again asked. So then the child was confused. So this way, actually, the person is confused because he is always thinking himself to be the body. But actually, the difference is that when we say that this is my hand, my leg, my head, my nose, that means I am different from all this thing. That Srila Prabhupada drive in that particular school and tried to explain that how we are different from the body. And Prabhupada is mentioning here, by little contemplation, we can understand that actually we are different from the body. And in the last paragraph of this purport, Srila Prabhupada very wonderfully summarizes all the 6 chapters. So we'll just read this so that we get a brief glimpse about this. So anybody can go ahead reading it.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat.
In the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, the knower of the body, the living entity, and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord are described. In the middle 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the relationship between the individual soul and the super soul in regard to devotional service are described. The superior position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the subordinate position of the individual soul are definitely defined in these chapters. The living entities are subordinate under all circumstances, but in their forgetfulness, they are suffering. When enlightened by pious activities, they approach the Supreme Lord in different capacities as the distressed, those in want of money, the inquisitive, and those in search of knowledge. That is also described. Now, starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity come into contact with material nature and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord through the different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and the discharge of devotional service are explained. Although the living entity is completely different from the material body, he somehow becomes related. This also is explained.
Yeah. So, thank you very much. So here we can see that Srila Prabhupada is very briefly giving us the synopsis that what all is there in the Bhagavad Gita. So first 6 chapters is dealing about the knower of the body and the position by which he can understand the Supreme Lord through Karma Yoga. And in the middle 6 chapters, the relationship between the soul and the super soul in regard to the devotional service, that is the Bhakti Yoga, that is explained. And then finally in the 13th chapter, how living entity comes in contact with the material nature, how he becomes conditioned, and how he is delivered through Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga is explained. So if you see in the 18th chapter, which is a summary of Bhagavad Gita again, because second chapter is also summary of contents of Gita summarized, and 18th chapter is summary of all that what is taught. So there explanation of again Karma Yoga is given, Jnana Yoga is also given, and Bhakti Yoga is always prominent in all the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is how we can see that Srila Prabhupada is giving understanding to us about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Now Krishna will go ahead to explain another type of Kshetrajna. So now let's recite the third verse. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetrajnayo jnanam jnanam matam mama. Somebody can read translation.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
O Scion of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion.
Yes. So here now Krishna is giving us one more dimension about Kshetrajna, that I am also knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called what? Knowledge. To understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. So we see that we should always remember the context that Arjuna has asked the 6 questions, and out of that the third, fourth, and fifth question is Kshetra, Kshetrajna, and Jnanam. So that's why now Krishna is giving the answer that I am also one of the Kshetrajna, and to understand Kshetra and Kshetrajna is nothing but Jnanam. That is real Jnanam, that is real knowledge. To understand Kshetra and Kshetrajna. Now here
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. One question, Prabhu. Here Krishna ends the sentence with that is my opinion. I also observed in the end of 6th chapter, he says Bhakti Yogi is the topmost yogi, and that is my opinion, he says. So why, Prabhuji, why does he not firmly say that is it and this is what it is, and why does he say my opinion, Prabhu? And both, like in some places I saw it, there and here also.
Very good, very good. Actually, I am going to come about explanation of this because there is a connection between this and next verse. Okay. So just before that, I will complete the discussion about Kshetrajna and then I will come back. So thank you, but for that question.
Right, thank you.
It was a very thoughtful question. So here we see that now Krishna is telling that I am also there within the kshetra, and I am also one of the kshetrajna. But what kind of kshetrajna I am? So we know that Lord is there situated as Paramatma within all the bodies of Jivatma. And in that sense, he is knower of all the bodies. Like we see that when we say that we are kshetrajna of our kshetra, that is our body. So what do we know about our body? Yes, if something is pain is there, we know that, oh, my leg is paining or my head is paining, my stomach is grumbling. So we are aware about this little bit. But if one of our family member or one of our batchmate, roommate, if he has some headache or pain in his stomach or something, do we know anything about it? We don't know. We can observe it by the symptoms which is displayed on his face, that there is some pain. But where is the pain? What is exactly happening? That we don't know. Why? Because we are kshetrajna only of our kshetra, our body. We are not kshetrajna of somebody else's body. That's why we cannot know anything about what is happening with other person's body. But there is one person who knows about all people, all Jivatma's body, and that is the Supreme Lord, or that is the Super Soul. And here we see in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying in the last line of the paragraph, because the Super Soul is a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, Krishna says, I am also the knower, but I am not the individual knower of the body. I am the super knower. I am present in every body as a Paramatma or super soul. So I was also referring to some lectures of Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. So he was mentioning that this terminology of super soul is coined especially by Srila Prabhupada. We don't find that so much in other people's commentary. They generally write is Paramatma or supreme consciousness or something like that. But it's like Superman, man and Superman. So like that, Prabhupada has given the soul and super soul, or here in this terminology, knower and supernower. So kshetrajna, so supreme kshetrajna, we can say. So that is nothing but the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And then Prabhupada is, Krishna is saying that one who studies the subject matter of the field of activity. Now, what is field of activity in the Sanskrit term?
Kshetra.
Yes, correct. Kshetra. So field of activity is kshetra. And what is knower of the field of activity?
Kshetrajna.
Kshetrajna, correct. So one who knows the kshetra and kshetrajna, that is nothing but the jnana, knowledge. So this is a very important thing. And then Prabhupada gives a very wonderful example in the purport. We see that in the Vedic time, the kings, they were ruling their kingdom. Now, it was not that when we say Yudhishthir Maharaj was the king of the whole world, that does not mean that there were no other kings on the earth. No, they were kings, but they had themselves accepted Yudhishthir Maharaj as the emperor. That yes, we are subordinate to Yudhishthir Maharaj. That was their acceptance. And they were having their own kingdom. All the kings, different kings were having their own kingdom. And they were aware about what is happening in their own kingdom. But they were not so much aware about what is happening in others' kingdom. But as emperor, he knows what is happening in everywhere. Or the another example which Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in the same regard here is that the king, the citizen in the kingdom, he has a patch of land, maybe 5 acres, 10 acres, and he is aware about that patch of land, what is happening there. But the king knows all land which belongs to him. So he is the what you say, the real proprietor, or the original proprietor. And then Prabhupada explains that actually in the same sense, the supreme soul or the super soul is the real proprietor, and the soul is secondary proprietor of the particular kshetra which the living entity has received. That means a particular type of body which the living entity has received. So here Srila Prabhupada quotes a particular Sanskrit verse for which there is no reference. Kshetrani hi sharirani bijam chapi shubha shubhe tani veti sa yoga atma tatha kshetrajna uchyate. So this body is called a kshetra, and within it dwells the owner of the body and the Supreme Lord, who knows both the body and the knower of the body. Therefore, he is called the knower of all fields. The distinction between the field of activities, the knower of activities, and the supreme knower of activities is described as follows. Now the real thing comes that many times what happens through these kind of verses, the Mayavadi interpreters, they immediately say that actually this Kshetrajna is nothing but that living entity only, and they equate the living entity with supreme soul or the super soul, and they said that is the only Kshetrajna. So to make it clear, here we can see in the verse the word cha is used. Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi. Cha means also. So we can see that let us say if I say that I am or we can say that Mr. X is in the room. Mr. X is sitting in the room. And then I add the statement that I am also in the room. So now if somebody says that I am Mr. X, so that is a big flaw. Why? Because I have used the word also. The word also makes it clear that I am different than Mr. X. Because Mr. X is already there and I am saying I am also in the room. So similarly here we can see that Krishna is saying Kshetrajnam chapi mam vidhi, that in this Kshetra I am also residing. When Krishna is saying I am also residing means he is completely different from the Kshetrajna which Krishna himself has described in the previous verse. Is this point clear to everyone?
Yes,
or
sir.
any doubts are there in this regard? Because this is a very important part which Srila Prabhupada also mentions in the last part of the purport, and he quotes from Shvetashvatar Upanishad. Bhokta bhogyam preritaram cha matva sarvam proktam trividham brahmam etat. And he mentioned that there are three Brahman conceptions. One is Prakriti, another is Jiva, and third is the controller of Prakriti and Jiva. So that is how we can see that actually it is all very clear that apart from the Kshetrajna, the living entity Kshetrajna, there is super soul Kshetrajna also existing. And then Prabhupada in the last paragraph of the purport, he mentions that one who misunderstands a rope to be a serpent is not in knowledge. So if somebody is trying to say that there is a snake, there is a snake, seeing a rope, if he's saying like that, then any sane man can very clearly say that he is not at all in knowledge. So that's why Supreme Soul is actually the real controller. He is the real master of all the bodies, all the kshetras of this world. So that is very, very, very clearly explained. And the last line we can see, Krishna explicitly says here that a real knowledge is to know that Super Soul is a controller of both the field of activities and the finite enjoyer. Very nice word Srila Prabhupada has written here for living entity. What is that? Finite enjoyer. Means he has some capacity to enjoy, but how it is? That is finite. Whereas the Supreme Lord or the Super Soul is the infinite Supreme Enjoyer. And he is actually the controller of both the field of activities and the finite enjoyer. So now, why the word Matam Mama has come? So there, that we will understand when we come to verse number 5. So is that okay, Prabhuji, if we just wait for this kind of discussion to answer to your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. So now let's go to verse number 4. Tat kshetram yaccha yadrukcha yadvikari yatascha
Yatascha
sachayo yat prabhavascha
Sachayo yat prabhavascha
tat samasena me shrunu.
Tatsamasena
Translation. Hare.
Yes, please read.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Now
Hare
please hear my brief description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, who that knower of the field of activity is, and what his influences are. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So here now Krishna is going to explain 6 topics about Kshetra and Kshetrajna. So this also should have been shown on a slide, but I'm sorry for not being prepared with the slides. So the first is, what is the composition of this body? Yat cha. What is it constituted of? Kis cheez se bana hua hai? How it is made of? What is the composition of the body? So if anybody would like to note down, maybe you can note it down. So first thing, what is Krishna is going to tell about is, what is the composition of the body? And that will be explained in the verse number 6. Okay. Then Yadrik, that is, what are the qualities of the body? That will be explained in the verse number 7. First is constitution or composition. Second is qualities. Third, what are the changes that body undergoes? Yad vikari. Changes that body undergoes. That is also explained in verse number 7. Then, what is the origin of the body? It is primarily explained in verse number 21 and 22. And then, what is the swarupa of the knower of the body? Swarupa of knower of the body. That will be explained in 14 to 18. And then finally, powers of the knower of the body. What is the power of the knower of the body? What is prabhava? Yat prabhava. That is also explained in 14 to 18.
Prabhuji, can you please repeat it once again?
Yes. First is constitution or composition of the body. Answer is in verse number 6. Second is qualities of the body. Answer is in verse number 7. Then what are the changes of the body? That is also in 7. What is the origin of the body? That is primarily in 21 and 22. So this is all related to body. That means the kshetra. And last 2 things are about kshetrajna. What is the identity or swarupa of the knower of the body? That is explained from 14 to 18. And finally, what is its prabhav, or what is the power of the kshetrajna? That is explained also in 14 to 18. So here Krishna is saying that this I am going to explain in brief. So now there may be a question that if Arjuna wants to know in detail what he should do, so that is explained in verse number 5. So we'll just briefly read the purport. Can somebody read the purport?
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Yeah, carry on, Mataji.
Okay, thank you, Saraswati Mataji.
No, this is not the one. Fourth purport to verse number 4.
The Lord is describing.
Yes.
Purport. The Lord is describing the field of activities and the knower of the field of activities in their constitutional positions. One has to know how this body is constituted, the materials of which this body is made, under whose control this body is working, how the changes are taking place, where from the changes are coming, what the causes are, what the reasons are, what the ultimate goal of the individual soul is, and what the actual form of the individual soul is. One should also know the distinction between the individual living soul and the super soul, their different influences, their potentials, etc. One just has to understand this Bhagavad Gita directly from the description given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and all this will be clarified. But one should be careful not to consider the Supreme Personality of Godhead in everybody to be one with the individual soul, the jiva. This is something like equating the potent and the impotent. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here we can see that Prabhupada is again mentioning in the last line what was discussed in the previous verse. So this is sometimes we see in the Prabhupada, he carries the mood to the next verse of the previous verses also. But why Prabhupada is mentioning is because if somebody makes this major mistake, then he will not really understand the Bhagavad Gita properly. So that's why he is again giving that cautionary warning. So here, this all things Krishna is going to explain in brief. And if Arjuna wants to know it in detail, then let us go to the verse number 5. ऋषिभिर् बहुधा गीतम् छन्दोभिर्विविधैः पृथक् ब्रह्मसूत्रपदैश्चैव मध्ये विनिश्चितैः. Translation. We can have this trend that I'll recite the verse and you will recite after me, and then one of you can read the translation. So somebody can read the translation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, may I read?
Yes, please.
Translation. That knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in various Vedic writings. It is especially presented in Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect.
So now, to the answering to the question which was asked by Praveen Prabhu, that why Krishna is saying Matan Mama. So one thing is that it is sure that he is Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is very clearly accepted by Arjuna also. But he don't want to impress upon directly that this is what it is, So that is a very unique and a wonderful way of presentation, and which we also see in great souls when they present anything. They also mention it in this way, as not about the philosophical facts, but about some discussions which happen on practical level or managerial level. So although the authorities or the senior devotees, they are in the position of mentioning that this has to be done, but then always they say that this is my opinion, So one has to be intelligent to understand that when some senior people who are saying in such a humble way, so we should be intelligent enough to accept that. But the tendencies of a conditioned soul is always to argue and fight back and try to establish one's own opinion. So in order to not give the conditioned soul this chance, also the senior and exalted souls, they present it in this way. And that is why in this way, there is no force, This is a kind of open end thing which Krishna is offering. Like we see at the end of the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna is telling to Arjuna that I have explained everything to you. Now you ponder over it, and if you like, you accept it. So this is what freedom Krishna is giving even after explaining whole Bhagavad Gita. And he always gives this freedom. So that free will is always there with the living entity. Krishna doesn't want to impose upon the living entity anything. He wants the living entity to willfully offer loving service to Krishna. So that is why Krishna always uses such words. So is that okay, Praveen Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Wonderful, Prabhuji. Wonderful. Thank you. That makes sense.
Yeah. So in that correction, then now here in this particular verse, apart from saying Matam Mama, Krishna is now giving substantial evidence about what he is going to say. About this, what is that evidence? Rishi Bhir Bahuda. Rishi Bhir means there are many sages in bygone ages. They have explained about this Kshetra and Kshetrajna in various Vedic writings. Chando Bhir Vibidhai Pruthak. That various different kinds of Vedic hymns have very clearly explained this. And also it is mentioned in Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva. Even in Brahma Sutra, you will find the explanation with all reasoning as to cause and effect. So that means here we can see that Krishna is in the role of a teacher or guru. So it is a duty of guru that he always substantiate what he is teaching based on the scriptures. We always say that if we want to know everything, whether it is perfect or not, so then what is to be done? We have to see whether it is in accordance with the sadhu and shastra. If guru is saying something, whether it is in accordance with sadhu or shastra, that has to be understood. And if it is there, this guru, sadhu and shastra, then that thing is certified and bona fide. So who are the sadhus? Sadhus are those sages in bygone ages, or the current in the current generation, the sages who are already living. And Shastra is the Vedic literatures. So Guru speaks based on what is there in Shastras and also based on what the previous acharyas or sages have mentioned. So this is a very important thing which we see Krishna following in the footsteps of as a teacher, as a ideal teacher. Krishna is also presenting his topic with substantial reference. So this is what we can see here. And in the purport to this verse, Srila Prabhupada gives various references, 2 or 3 references about how the Kshetra and Kshetrajna is mentioned in various scriptures. So we will just take one of it. So if we see in the first paragraph, you can read from, and the Vyasdev's father. and Vyasdev's father. You can highlight it so that everybody wants. Yeah.
And Vyasdev's father, Parashara, is also a great sage, and he writes in his books of religiosity, Aham Tvam Cha Tatanye. We, you, I, and the various other living entities are all transcendental, although in material bodies. Now we are fallen into the ways of the three modes of material nature according to our different karma. As such, some are on higher levels and some are in the lower nature. The higher and lower nature exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the super soul, which is infallible, is uncontaminated by the three qualities of nature and is transcendental. Similarly, in the original Vedas, a distinction between the soul, the super soul, and the body is made, especially in the Katha Upanishad. There are many great sages who have explained this, and Parashara is considered principal among them. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So this is Parashara Samhita, a religiosity book written by Parashara, and here he is mentioning Aham Tvam Cha Tathanye. And Srila Prabhupada is giving explanation that it's same thing, Kshetra, Kshetradnya, and there are two types of Kshetradnya. One is the living entity, and other is super soul. So same thing is explained here in a different way. So the difference is what between the living entity Kshetradnya and super soul Kshetradnya is that living entity is fallible and super soul is infallible. So that is how we can see that these all things are explained there. So same thing, Prabhupada gives few more explanation in the purport, which you all can go through and at your time, and then if there is some confusion, we can discuss. So let's go to verse number 6 and 7. Before we go to verse number 6 and 7, is there any doubt or question till what we have discussed so far?
Prabhuji, I just please correct my understanding if my understanding is correct or not. So, Kshetra is referred to body, and Kshetragnya is that is a knower of the field is referred to the soul and super soul. Soul or the living entity is fallible and super soul is infallible. Am I right, or please correct if I'm wrong?
Yes, that is a perfect summary of what we have discussed till now.
Okay, thanks, Prabhuji.
Anybody else has any other question or any clarification? So we'll go to verse number 6 and 7. Mahabhutanyahankaro
Ahankaro
buddhiravyaktameva cha
Yekyevacha
indriyani dashaikam cha
Indriyani dashaikam cha
pancachendriya gocharaha
pancachendriya gochara
ichha dvesha sukham dukkham
ichha dvesha sukham dukham
sanghataschetana dhrutihi
sanghata dhriti
etat kshetram samasena
etat kshetram samasena
vikaramudaritam.
savikaramudatam.
So as we have written, what is the verse number 6 giving explanation of? It is giving, kshetra. What is the constitution of the kshetra?
Yes.
And what are the qualities? Qualities will be also explained in next verse. It is already there in the 7th verse. So 6th and 7th verse explains about the constitution of the kshetra and the qualities of the kshetra. So let's see. Yeah, before we go ahead, let somebody can read the translation.
Yes, Prabhu, I can read the translation.
Please.
So 6 and 7, the 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested, the 10 senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms, and convictions, all these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its intent and its interactions.
Thank you. So it starts with Mahabhutani. Now the constitution of Kshetra. What is this Kshetra made up of? Mahabhutani. Anybody knows what is this Mahabhutani?
Panchabhuta.
Yes.
5 gross elements. Prabhu.
Correct.
Panchabhuta.
Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then next which is mentioned is Ahankara. That is a false ego, which is the cause of Mahabhuta. So we saw in the previous verse the cause and effect was mentioned. So Mahabhutas, false ego is the cause of Mahabhutas. And then the next item mentioned is what? Buddhi. Yeah, Buddhi or intelligence refers to the Mahat Tattva, which is the cause of Ahankar. And then next mention is what? Avyakta. Avyakta refers to the Prakriti, which is the cause of Mahat Tattva. And then we see then there is a break. Second line comes with the Indriyani. Word begins with Indriyani. So what are the Indriyani? Indriyani means the senses. So which type of senses? There are 2 types of senses.
Knowledge, experience senses, and working senses.
Correct. So they are 10 in number. Indriyani, Dasha Ekam. The 10 senses and the Ekam. What is the Ekam? What is the 11th sense?
Mind.
Mind, correct. And then Pancha Indriya Gochara. What is the Indriya Gochara?
Karmendriya.
No. Yes.
Sense.
Correct. The sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. So if you calculate this, how many it becomes?
15 plus 1
is 5.
18.
Ahankar, Buddhi, Avyakta, 8.
24.
Then 10 senses, 18.
Right.
And 5 Panchendriya Gochara. That it becomes 20.
23.
And what is the Ekam? Mind.
Prakriti.
So that becomes 24. So this is the body is made up of these 24 elements. So we are talking about what? The Kshetra. That is the body. So body is constituted of these 24 elements. Now, and if we do thorough analysis of this, then we'll understand that all the bodies in this world are made up of these 24 elements. So why so much of analysis is done of this? To make us understand that living entity wants to enjoy always. So to make us understand that actually there's nothing there to enjoy. If we see every particular item, if we take in separate, separation, let's say if we see keep a glass of water on my table. So what kind of enjoyment a glass of water can give? It at the max, what it does is to quench the thirst. But we cannot say that, oh, I so much enjoy water, or if there is dirt, so what will dirt do, but the combination of all these things gives some kind of forms, some kind of taste, some kind of smell, and that is what is making living entity attract to, and that is what is making him to become attached to, and that is what is making him to again take repeated birth and death. So that this description here is given in order to understand that this kshetra is made up of this kind of elements, and one need not get diverted from one's goal of human form of life. which is much more different than just getting attracted to the interactions of these 24 elements. So to make us understand this thing, Krishna is very thoroughly giving analysis of this. And then in the 7th verse, he explains what are the qualities of this body. Not body actually, the kshetra. We have to be very clear. It's obviously the kshetra is the body, but when we say kshetra, it also includes the subtle body, not only the gross body. Because just now we saw that in the constitution of kshetra, the ahankar is also given, buddhi is also given, man is also given. And we know that subtle body is constitution of man, buddhi and ahankar. So the qualities of kshetra are mentioned in verse number 7. And what are the qualities? Ichha, dvesha, sukha, dukkha are well known. These are some common qualities which are mentioned here. Then dhruti. Dhruti is perseverance. So it don't you think it is little bit kind of more better quality than just sukha, dukkha, ichha, dvesha. So dvesha is obviously not a very good quality. Dukkha is not a good quality. But ichha, sukha is very good quality. People want that. But here dhriti is mentioned. Dhriti is perseverance, which is also very good quality. But we have to be very clear in this that all these qualities are not of the soul. These qualities are mentioned in relation to the mind. We can see the mind has the tendency of sankalpa and vikalpa. Some things which mind likes, he will accept, and other things it will reject. So in this way, this sankalpa and vikalpa goes on. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he quotes from Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad that kama sankalpo vichikitsa shraddha ashraddha dhritir adhritir rir dhir bhir iti etat sarvam mana eva. What are the qualities of mind? That the desire, determination, uncertainty, faith, lack of faith, perseverance, lack of perseverance, humility, intelligence, and fear are all products of the mind. So from this we can see that the qualities which Krishna has mentioned in the verse are not exhaustive. Just some brief things have been mentioned. But at the same time, we can see the good qualities which are mentioned here, like having faith or humility or perseverance. These are also qualities of the mind. So what is the hope for us? What arrangement Krishna has made for us? That even in conditioned state, the living entity has the power utilizing these qualities to come out of the conditioning. So this is a very wonderful thing Lord Krishna has arranged for all of us. And just like these are the qualities of mind, similarly, there are real qualities of the soul, which are already present, like humility, perseverance, and faith are in true sense actually the real qualities of the soul. But in conditioned state, even the mind can exhibit these qualities. And in verse number 8 to 12, which we'll be discussing in our next session, we will see what are the different items of knowledge and what are these saintly qualities, which have been explained by Krishna in great detail. And Srila Prabhupada has so very wonderfully explained at a great length about each quality. So certainly we'll go through that in our next session. But the point here, what we can see is that mind has some of these good qualities, and utilizing that, we can come out of this conditioning and to our true constitutional position. And finally, we can also see that this field, which is kshetra, has got 6 kind of savikaram. So 6 kind of changes or transformations. So what are the 6 changes of the body? Anybody knows?
Birth, growing,
Death,
Go.
growing,
existing,
Yes.
Producing
Byproduct.
reproduction,
Yes.
reproduction,
Dwindling.
dwindling, and
Vanish.
vanish. Vanish.
Vanish.
So from this, what we can see is that the kshetra, which is there, has got this final change called as death. It's going to vanish one day. But that is not the case with the kshetrajna. The kshetrajna is eternal, whereas the kshetra, the body, is going to perish one day. So this is what is explained in these first 7 verses of the 13th chapter. So anybody has any question in this regard? I will just summarize. We saw that Arjuna, in the beginning of the this chapter, the first verse, he places 6 questions. And as we discussed, that actually Arjuna is completely freed from illusion, but for the sake of now others, he is asking various questions so that Krishna, through the mouth of Krishna, we can get the best answer of certain things. And here he is asking specifically some important terminologies which are very common in Vedic culture, and he wants to know more about that. And from verse number 2 to 7, we saw that Krishna explained what is kshetra, what is kshetrajna. Then there is super soul, who is super knower, who is the real kshetrajna of all kinds of kshetra. And then we saw that Krishna is further explaining it in a more in a very brief way, but which is also mentioned in various kind of scriptures, and it is also explained by many sages in bygone ages. And finally, Krishna explains what are the constitution of this body, and what are the qualities of the body, and what are the changes that occur in the body. Hare Krishna. So if there are no questions, we'll conclude for today's session. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai.
Ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.